Ladies and gents, part number 3. We're still here with Big Loz. He's in the house, and we've had a good run through, mate, but plenty more still to discuss. And I wanted to start, Loz, by just asking you, you've been in this sport since 2005. You've pretty much seen everything there is to see and done everything there is to do. What is, in your opinion, your greatest ever feat of strength? Sorry to put you on the spot with.
I genuinely believe one of my most impressive feats was breaking the yoke world record in Dubai a couple of years back. We did a 580 kilo yoke and literally had all the best guys in the world. Kilias Koski was there, Thor, Ian Bibby, who's good at yoke. Who else? Brian Shaw. All the top guys. And I just hit the perfect run. I picked it up, and it just felt easy.
Yeah.
And I kind of flew to the end. I finished the yoke in 15 seconds. 580 kilos. Which is a huge weight. But when I compare my time to guys like Kilias Koski, Thor, both of those hit it in 20 seconds. Brian Shaw was about 26 seconds. Ian Bibby didn't even finish. Most of the field, guys that are amazing yoke, made a couple of steps. And to just blitz that level of competition on an event, it felt pretty good. And then you had guys like Zydrunas and Kilias Koski coming up to me afterwards saying how impressive it was. Mm-hmm. And when people that you look up to and you respect kind of come to you and say how good something was, it makes you feel good.
I can imagine it does, mate. You lead me on to the next point I was going to make there. Obviously, you've seen a lot of characters. You've seen a lot of faces in this game. I wanted to ask you 2 questions related to that. The first one being, who is and it doesn't have to be one guy if there's a couple of names in there, but who are the guys that you have most looked up to and been impressed by throughout your entire strongman career?
Okay, there's definitely a few. I mean, the first person I'll always mention is Zydrunas. Zydrunas, to me, is the best strongman of all time. Hands down. I don't care what anyone says. The guy, and for the reasons being longevity, the guy's been doing it at the top level for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. He's broken more world records than anyone. He's won more titles than anyone. And in his prime, he wasn't even pushed. We still don't know what he was capable of in his prime. He was breaking the log world record on a monthly basis. And I've spoken to him, and I'm one of those people that's quite skeptical about what people say they're capable of doing. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to Zydrunas, I believe what he says he's capable of, or was capable of. Unfortunately, he's past his prime now, and I don't think we're ever going to see him back to his best. But that's just the nature of sport and the nature of aging. But in his prime, he was unbelievable, and he was doing things at such a ridiculous level before the likes of Eddie and Thor and Brian and those kind of guys came along. I mean, he dominated squat events at World's Strongest Man. His pressing was unbelievable. In his prime, his deadlifting was unbelievable. Yeah. There was just no weakness, and he could just turn up to one-day shows and compete at 70% and win. It was just a training session for him. Mm-hmm. These days, it's just impossible to do that because the standard's so high. But in his prime, I genuinely believe he's the greatest of all time. When I was very young, I used to love watching Bill Kazmaier on TV. Bill is just another crazy character. Even now, he's
yeah, even now, today. Today, that dude is like that, isn't he?
I sit down with Uncle Bill and have story time, and he'll tell you some interesting stories. I don't know that I believe them all, but
Bill's iron, isn't he? Bill. I mean, obviously, I work super closely with Bill, but you cannot look. If you don't love that dude, there's something wrong with you. He is just the biggest character you have ever met in your life, isn't he? And he's so visceral, isn't he? There's only 3 people harder than Bill in the world, and 2 of them statues. He's just an animal. Bill Kazmaier, what a dude. Was he who got you in there? Was he your original inspiration?
No, Bill was a bit more before my time, to be honest. I mean, the guys that I looked up to when I was watching World's Strongest Man were actually Magnus Samuelsson and Sven Carlson. They were like the two guys that I really looked up to when I first started watching it on TV. And it's been nice to sort of meet them. I got to spend quite a bit of time with Magnus recently when he came over. He was giving me some arm wrestling tips as well, which was brilliant. But yeah, lovely guy.
What a lovely bloke. He really is, isn't he? He's a genuinely. You meet a lot of nice guys. That's a genuinely lovely fella.
Guy, which is nice because I'd heard stories, and you don't know what to believe until you meet someone. But genuinely lovely person, and someone as a kid I really looked up to. As I evolved as a strongman, and this isn't being disrespectful to him, but the era that he competed in wasn't the strongest, and statically he wasn't like the guys that are now, but still an amazing athlete. Very, very strong grip, very, very athletic, moved well, and just, he was the world's strongest man. And Sven as well. Sven Carlson was a great character, actually extremely strong as well, and someone that I looked up to when I was starting out. But when I then got really into strongman, I started watching all the old stuff, and, I've watched every single world's strongest man there is. I'm a right nerd when it comes to sport. But yeah, Bill Kazmar, just kind of the entertainment value, and the way he would talk to people, disrespect them, but then back it up as well. He backed up his talk, and he was a genuinely very, very powerful man. Probably the only person from that period that would have been strong enough to compete with the guys now.
It's funny, isn't it? You mentioned with Zydrunas, we never really saw Zydrunas pushed or his true potential. I think you could probably say the same of Bill, because Bill was banned for other reasons, just because he's Bill. At a time when he was probably at his absolute peak, and we didn't see him. He was
probably banned for three or 4 years, where he would have probably dominated.
And it he always makes he'll always say, you speak to Bill and he says like, oh yeah, these guys now, they don't know the bone because, and he says it with this like underlying gravel, these guys don't know the bone. But he talks about the equipment that everybody, he said, when we did the stones, there was no stones. Now everybody's got a set of stones in their garage in the local gym they train with. To be fair, Bill Kazmaier wanted to train stones, short of shooting King Kong. Where's he going to get a massive set of stones?
Yeah.
It didn't exist. So he does have a point. And he was talking about the log. He said, with the log lift. And he said, now it's a perfectly smooth, very even weighted log.
Well,
you buy into that? Do you agree with all
this?
this?
Them up, standing up. So they picked up from the side, pull them up onto their lap, roll them up, and he just pressed them up, and they were big bits of tree that had just been chopped down. So he makes a point, that the equipment wasn't as balanced and well made as it is now. It was all kind of rough and rural, and you had to just get on with it.
It was kind of a endearing quality about that, though, wasn't there? There was like an allure of that. We just cut this tree down. You want to pick it up?
I love watching some of the old strongman shows. They're brilliant.
Absolute quality. So you wind the clock forward, mate, and you look at this new crop of emerging superstars and professional strongman, as we say, and you've got some killers out there. I mean, obviously you've your physical giants, the likes of Brian we've seen dominate for so many years, Thor, who's right there now, but you've also got this other crop of really promising talents. Kilikovsky's the one that immediately jumped into your mind. Lysis, the current world's strongest man. Novikov. On the scene now that you got any guys now that you're particularly warm to?
I think the guy that is me, and it's not. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone. Is Kilikovsky. He's unbelievable, and he has to win World's Strongest Man.
Gotta come on it.
Yeah, I think he's just so good and keeps getting better. I think just at the Arnolds, he won 4 of the 6 events. It's just the deadlift sometimes that lets him down.
Yeah.
But if they don't put a deadlift in a competition, we're all screwed.
Do you think he can improve there enough? in the dead? Do you think it's always going to be that
You know what?
problem
He's not
for
even a
us?
weak deadlifter. He's a 400 kilo plus deadlifter. It's just there's so many good deadlifters.
I mean, that's ridiculous, isn't it? That's when you say it like that, the guy's over 400 on a dead,
I
and
mean,
he's getting up.
yeah, it just shows the standard of the sport right now. But he's so good at everything else that I don't think it'll matter. You know, the only reason I think he maybe hasn't won is guys like Thor are so good, and Thor could be a problem for a lot of people as long as he wants to stay around. But there's so many great talented guys, particularly in England as well. We've got so many great up and coming guys. I mean, obviously Tom is the one everyone talks about, particularly with his frame. He's got that Thor-like frame. He's tall, long arms, amazing at things like stones. His static strength is getting better all the time. He seems mentally, not distracted by wanting to go to other sports that might pay better. So he really, he's got his brother to help keep him focused. I mean, Luke himself is a great strongman, but I think for the future, particularly in the UK, you're looking at Tom, and then there's another guy on his way up, Luke
Richardson.
Luke, extremely good.
Improving statically.
Yeah, but he's so new to the sport still. I think give him a year or two to keep developing. I don't like seeing people put too much pressure on some of the youngsters, and we saw it with Tom for a little while. People were like bigging him up and just not letting him develop. And the sport's such a high level. I mean, one bad show and it can get in your head and cost you, or one bad injury. Yeah. So I prefer to sort of let them get on with it and not sort of big them up too much. It's not to say I don't think they're capable of, but I feel like, for instance, you see a lot of guys, it's something I tell a lot of my younger clients. It doesn't really matter how good you are at 19, 20, 21. It matters that you keep progressing from that age. And I know many, many guys that are extremely good at that young age, and then they just hit a brick wall and they don't progress. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's more important to see that continued progress. But I think someone like Luke is going to keep progressing. He's a smart kid. He knows how to train. He's got a good group of people around him. He's focused. And I think he will get better and better.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, Luke, funnily enough, I was on the phone to Ed the other night, and he mentioned Luke. Yeah. He just said, yeah, it's funny. I think he'd been over there at Darren's place training with him and so on. And he said, if you think about it, Luke Richardson is deadlifting more at that age than I was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you only a puppy, Luke. If he gets to his full potential, where can he go? I said to Ed, do you think he could be the guy that could break the 500? And Eddie said, yeah. Oh, yeah. He said, I think if I coached him to do that later in his career, yeah, I think he really could. So, like you say, that the potential, and we don't know who the hell else is out there.
Exactly. I mean, the Ukraine and Russia and places like this, they got crazy guys hiding that we don't even know about.
Is there a kid out there now watching this that's thinking, yeah?
I will say to any youngsters kind of watching, and it's a concern I have for Novikov, who I think is unbelievable, by the way. But I think, especially the way the sport is moving forwards with so many competitions, so many big events, you need to start being more selective about your shows. I think one of the big mistakes is people trying to compete in everything and burning themselves out. We've seen it with Belsac, for instance. His hip now is just messed up. And a lot of youngsters, they get the opportunity because they're good, and then they want to go to every single show. They do the Giants Live, Champions Leagues, the worst shows. There's so many big shows now that they're destroying themselves. And I can tell you from experience, don't do it. Be selective, focus on doing one show well and recovering, building up towards the next one. That, like I said, there's always shows going on, and you don't have to do every single competition. Pick the big ones, peak for them, then back off and let yourself recover and build up again for the next one. Eddie was actually very good at that. He didn't do too many shows. It was a bit of advice I gave him early on in his career. I'm pretty sure he listened. I told him not to do some of like the Champions Leagues and stuff like that because there's so many of them and all the traveling and competing. You don't then get the chance to make that progress.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I regret in my career. And Terry did the same as well. We competed too much early on. And then you start getting injured and you're relying on prize money and you think you've got to go compete anyway. And it's just, it's a bad kind of hole to get into. So for the youngsters, I would definitely say, focus on big shows, focus on no more than 4 or 5 a year and focus on that progress. Give yourself the time to train and make that progress. Because when you're competing all the time, all you're trying to do is be at your best for the show. but you're not working on weaknesses. You're not kind of improving areas that need improving. You're just trying to be good at whatever the events might be in the show. But that way you end up starting getting injured. You start kind of neglecting areas and then sometimes going backwards. So I do sort of see some of the youngsters like just they need to be careful.
And the interesting thing there is, mate, maybe, I mean, you spoke about it earlier in this series, the opportunity for the youngsters now coming in to sort of ground themselves or get the ticket to the big show is more evident than it's ever been. You can perform one remarkable feat of strength that gets the attention of the world, the strength world, and suddenly you're the kid that they're on the phone to invite into the show because, like you say, bums on seats. Everybody's seen you doing something that's remarkable. It's going to take went back in the glorious olden days of this thing. You kind of had to get out there in a way because if you wanted to be a pro strongman, you got to make the money. Someone like Marty Beljac, he's anywhere and everywhere, but he's probably chasing what we all need,
I mean, even like without the prize money side of things, I mean, back then, just to get experience with using the kit, you needed to compete. Whereas now, there's kit in all the gyms.
Yeah.
So you don't need to be competing in all these shows. I've got a number of clients that they want to compete every week, and I'm like, no, you need to rest. You need to focus on making progress.
Yeah.
They start to understand it after a while, especially when after a few years you see other people. I'm like, that's the reason why. You see a lot of guys that just stay at that same level. They get good, but then they stay at that same level and they just try and compete at that same level all the time. We've all got opportunity to train on kit now in different gyms. It's not like when I started and that was the only way you'd get any experience. So be more selective. It's probably the best advice I can give them, and just don't rush things.
Like you say, a different world now. You've got dedicated strongman gyms like, Strongman Temple down south. They're all over the place.
Yeah, there's a competition every weekend. Every single weekend there's strongman competitions going on. You could, if you wanted to, you could compete, every week.
What's the best way to get a base, Laurence, in terms of for strongman? Is it powerlifting? Is it that sort of tried and tested route, you'd think, or should guys come into it and start going into strongman straight away?
No, I think it depends on your strength levels. Hello, you. You're being squeaky. Oh. Daddy's talking. Sorry. I think powerlifting is a great base to build that strength, that static strength. And I think having some athletic type of background massively helps as well. And actually, I find most of the really good athletes have come from other sports. So you learn that mental side of competing. I've competed in sports since I was 3. Eddie was a great swimmer, and Thor was a great basketball player. Terry was a great rugby player. Most of us have come from other sports, so you know how to cope in that competitive environment. A lot of guys that just train in the gym actually crumble under pressure. But in terms of basics to develop the foundations, powerlifting movements work really well, but I'd focus a little bit more on your overhead for strongman rather than bench press. I do think bench is a great exercise, by the way, but strongman, it's not as important. Overhead is more important. And staying athletic, staying reasonably fit, don't just become a big blob that can just squat, because you'll never make a good strongman like that. You still need to be able to move. You need that athletic ability. Once you develop the fundamental strength, then you can start incorporating events and, then work at getting better at those. They're developing the strength takes longer. So sometimes I think people rush into the strongman comps too quickly. They end up competing in shows that are too heavy for them, and then unfortunately get injured or stop. I've seen so many guys after a year or two doing strongman, they're just battered because it's a tough sport. And if you're doing events, focus on technique and speed rather than weight. A good example is like me on the yoke and farmers. I train them for speed. I don't train them for max weight. I'm already lifting and squatting in the gym, so that's working the muscles to lift the weights. I try and work on technique and foot speed to teach myself to be quick. Whereas if I was putting a lot of weight on my back and just plodding along slowly, you actually teach yourself to move slowly. So little tips like that massively help on those type of events.
It's going to be interesting as the sport develops to see whether there's more of an opportunity for the guys like yourself who've been there, done it, and bought the T-shirt to start really getting into roles, professional roles, where you can be employed to coach these guys. You know, it would be a fabulous world if that comes about. Is that something you'd aspire to?
Definitely. I mean, right now I'm focused on my own kind of like I am coaching. It's what I'm doing. You know, I've got a good number of clients at completely different levels. But yeah, if like say the Giants Live or something like that wanted to kind of really invest into an elite lifting school or something like that, some kind of development kind of tour, etc., then something I would definitely be interested in.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, Loz, I know we're pretty much out of time. You've got a limit, and I want to say thank you very much for your kindness, your time, and supporting the show, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, brother, as always.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you for having
want to
me.
wish you and your family all the best through obviously uncertain times at the moment with the COVID-19 outbreak. But ladies and gents, I hope you you enjoyed this little series of shows with Laurence Shahlaei. We'll definitely be getting Loz back on here to check in with us regularly. And Loz, we look forward to seeing you around, mate. Remember, guys, if you like this stuff, subscribe, share, tell the world about it. People need to know. We just got started and we want it to get bigger. Loz, thank you again, brother.
Thank you, mate. Take it easy. Cheers.